I still remember the day everything changed. My name is Caroline Brooks, and I'm 35 years old. For the past 7 years, I've worked as the personal assistant to Mr. Douglas Shaw, a man who built his fortune from ranching, oil, and hard work. He was a man people respected, feared, and most of all admired. But the truth is, what happened in his family would shock even the most heartless person. Before I tell you how his son-in-law tried to sell his ranch while he lay in a coma, let me just say this. Mr. Shaw wasn't as helpless as everyone thought. He saw everything. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal. And what he knew about his family. Well, that secret was big enough to destroy them all. Now before we dive into that chaos, tell me, where are you watching from? I love knowing who's listening to this story. Are you from Toronto, maybe Vancouver? Or somewhere down south, Texas, maybe California? Wherever you are, I promise, this story will keep you on the edge of your seat. Okay, let's start from the top. When I first met Mr. Shaw, I was 28 and desperate for a job. I had just moved to Montana after losing both my parents in a car crash. Life had knocked me down hard, but I was determined to stand back up. The ad said, "Personal assistant needed. Must be loyal, patient, and good with people." I applied thinking it was just another office job. But when I arrived at Shaw Ranch, I realized it was much more than that. The ranch stretched over hundreds of acres, golden fields, horses grazing, and mountains that looked like they touched heaven. It was peaceful, the kind of place where you could forget your pain. Mr. Shaw was standing by the stables when I first met him. A tall, silver-haired man in a brown hat, with eyes that could see right through you. He wasn't smiling, but there was warmth in the way he greeted me. "Caroline Brooks?" he asked. His voice deep and rough from years of shouting over wind and cattle. "Yes, sir." He nodded. "You're hired. I don't need interviews. I can tell when someone's honest." That was it. Just like that I had the job. And from that day my life started to change. The Shaw family was complicated. Very complicated. There was Margaret, Mr. Shaw's wife, a graceful woman who once had beauty that could stop a man's heart. Then there was their only daughter, Elena Shaw, who married a man named Tyler Grant, a slick, city-born businessman with a smile too perfect to be real. Tyler was one of those men who always seemed to have a plan. He was charming, polite, and always said the right things, but something about him never felt right to me. He didn't love the land or the people. He loved the money. Still, Mr. Shaw adored his daughter and tolerated Tyler. Family was everything to him. That's why when he fell ill and slipped into a coma after a heart attack, everyone thought the ranch would fall apart. But we had no idea. The real storm hadn't even started yet. It happened on a Monday morning. I came into the office as usual, ready to organize payroll and check on the cattle reports. The house was quiet, too quiet. Margaret was upstairs with the nurses, and Elena hadn't come by in days. But when I stepped into the study, I froze. Tyler was there, sitting behind Mr. Shaw's mahogany desk. His feet were up, his tie loosened, and he was smiling like a man who'd just won the lottery. "Well, Caroline," he said casually, "you're here early." I frowned. "Mr. Shaw's desk isn't supposed to be used, sir." He laughed, the sound light but cold. "Mr. Shaw won't be needing it anymore, will he? The doctors said he might never wake up." Something in my stomach twisted. "That's not true. He's improving." I shrugged. "Maybe. But I can't run this place on hope. I've got responsibilities. I've decided it's best to sell the ranch." I blinked, thinking I'd misheard him. Sell the ranch? Without Mr. Shaw's permission? He leaned forward, his tone smug. "He signed power of attorney months ago. I'm legally allowed to make business decisions. And with Elena's approval, I'm finalizing the deal this week." My hands went cold. Tyler Grant was planning to sell everything. The land, the livestock, the Shaw legacy, while his father-in-law lay unconscious in a hospital bed. "But this ranch is worth more than money," I whispered. "It's your father-in-law's life's work." Tyler's eyes hardened. "Not my problem. The old man built his empire. Now it's my turn to expand it. I wanted to scream, but fear held me still. I needed proof before I could do anything. What I didn't know then was that Mr. Shaw could hear everything. He was awake, trapped inside his body, aware of every word, every sound. His body might have failed him, but his mind was sharp. And as Tyler set his evil plan into motion, Mr. Shaw silently watched from the hospital bed, a secret burning in his heart, a secret that could ruin Tyler and everyone who betrayed him. Now let's rewind a little. Let me tell you how I became close enough to the Shaw family to know every secret that ran through that big house. Mr. Shaw wasn't just my boss. He became like a father to me. I had no one left, and he saw that. He used to say, "Caroline, kindness is never wasted. It always finds its way back." Those words carried me through some of my hardest days. He'd let me sit by the fire after long days of work, sipping tea while he told stories about his early days. How he built the ranch with nothing but his bare hands and a dream. He taught me what it meant to be strong, to forgive, and to keep moving even when life tried to bury you. Elena was kind to me at first. She'd call me her dad's favorite, though she said it with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I think she loved her father deeply, but she also loved Tyler's promises. Fancy houses, big city life and status. Tyler had her wrapped around his finger. As time went on, I started noticing small changes. Tyler began taking business calls late at night. He'd step outside whenever I entered the room. Elena started acting distant, distracted. And Mr. Shaw, well, he was beginning to sense that his family wasn't as united as it looked. One evening, about a month before the heart attack, Mr. Shaw called me into his study. He closed the door and spoke in a low, serious tone. "Caroline," he said, "I need you to keep your eyes open. There are things happening I can't stop right now. But when the time comes, you'll know what to do." I didn't understand then what he meant. But now I do. The day Mr. Shaw collapsed, I was the one who found him. He had been in the barn, feeding the horses, when I heard the sound of a bucket fall. I ran in and saw him lying on the ground, clutching his chest. "Mr. Shaw, stay with me," cried, grabbing my phone. The ambulance came fast, but not fast enough. They said it was a massive heart attack. He slipped into a coma that same night. The doctors said he might wake up, or he might not. The family gathered around his hospital bed for a few days, crying, whispering, praying. Then slowly, one by one, they started drifting away, except for me. I stayed. Every single day I read to him, played his favorite country songs, and talked to him like he was awake. Maybe that's why I was the first to notice the changes in his heartbeat when Tyler's name came up. Maybe that's why I believe he knew everything. Weeks passed. The ranch went quiet. Then one morning I overheard Tyler on the phone again. This time his voice was low, urgent. "Yeah," he said. "We're finalizing Friday. The buyer's wiring the deposit. Once the old man's gone, it's all ours." That was the moment I knew something terrible was about to happen. Tyler wasn't just selling land. He was selling a man's entire life. And worse, he didn't care who he crushed in the process. What none of us knew, what even Tyler didn't know, was that Mr. Shaw wasn't just lying there helplessly. He had planned for something like this. He had left clues, recordings, and one massive secret hidden inside that hospital room. A secret that could change everything. That Friday, as Tyler dressed up for his meeting in the city, the wind outside began to howl. Storm clouds rolled over the ranch, the sky dark and angry. I watched him drive away in his black SUV. His reflection flashing in the rain-soaked window. My heart was pounding. I knew what he was about to do. But I didn't know what to do to stop him. All I knew was this. Something told me that day wasn't going to end the way he expected. Because Mr. Shaw wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. And when the truth finally came out, no one in that family would ever be the same again. That Friday morning felt wrong from the moment I opened my eyes. The sky over Shaw Ranch was an ugly gray, thick with clouds that looked heavy enough to burst. The air was restless, like the world was holding its breath before something big. I remember standing by the kitchen window, holding a mug of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. The wind kept rattling the glass panes, and the horses were restless in the pasture. Animals always sense when something bad is coming. People don't listen, but they do. That was the day Tyler Grant planned to sell the Shaw Ranch. I had overheard him on the phone again the night before. He thought I was gone, but I'd stayed late to finish payroll. His voice had been cold and confident as he said, "Friday 10 a.m. the deal will be done. The land will transfer in 48 hours. Once it's official, there's no going back." He was going to sell it. Everything Mr. Shaw had built, all of it. What Tyler didn't know was that I had secretly recorded that conversation on my phone. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't letting him destroy that ranch without a fight. At 8 a.m., Tyler came downstairs looking sharp. Black suit, navy tie. His smile as fake as a painted dollar. "Morning, Caroline," he said like nothing was wrong. "I hope you didn't forget to send the files I asked for." I nodded, pretending to play along. "Of course, sir. All ready." He grabbed a cup of coffee, hummed a tune, and winked. "You're efficient as always. After today you won't have to work so hard. Things will change around here." I smiled politely, but my insides were boiling. He thought I was just the help, a quiet, harmless assistant. He had no idea I'd become the one person standing between him and the ranch he was trying to steal. As his car disappeared down the long gravel road, I turned toward the old barn. There, hanging on the wall, was a photograph of Mr. Shaw standing beside a young version of himself with his first horse. A man who'd come from nothing, who'd earned every inch of that land through sweat and kindness. I whispered under my breath, "I'll protect what's yours, sir. I promise." That same morning I drove to St. Helena Hospital, where Mr. Shaw was still in a coma. It had been 3 weeks since his collapse, but I visited him every single day. When I entered the room, the sound of machines humming and the slow, steady beeping of his heart monitor filled the silence. His skin looked pale under the hospital lights, but his face was peaceful, like he was just sleeping. I sat beside him and took his hand. "Good morning, Mr. Shaw. It's Friday. Tyler's heading out. He says he's going to sell the ranch today." His heart monitor beeped a little faster. Froze. "Did you hear me?" I whispered. The monitor beeped again, twice this time. Steady, strong, and then faster when I said Tyler's name again. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It couldn't be, could it? I leaned closer. "If you can hear me, and you don't want that ranch sold, please do something. Give me a sign." For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of rain starting to hit the window. Then, just as I started to pull away, the heart monitor beeped twice, sharp and deliberate. My heart skipped. "Oh my God," I whispered. "You can hear me." I didn't know if I was imagining it, but I knew what I felt. It was real. Mr. Shaw was in there, trapped inside his body, aware of everything happening around him. And something told me he had been aware the entire time. I quickly grabbed my phone and pulled up the recording of Tyler's conversation. I played it softly near his bed. The moment Tyler's voice came through, talking about selling the ranch, the heart monitor spiked again. That confirmed it. Mr. Shaw knew exactly what was happening. I leaned in close and whispered, "Don't worry. I'll stop him. Somehow." But just as I said it, a voice came from behind me. "Stop who?" I turned around sharply. It was Elena, Mr. Shaw's daughter. She stood in the doorway, her eyes red from crying. She was wearing expensive heels and a beige trench coat, her hair pinned back neatly. "Elena," I said, trying to sound calm. "I didn't hear you come in." She looked suspicious. "What are you doing with that phone?" I forced a small smile. "Just playing him some music. Doctors say familiar sounds help." Her eyes darted to her father, then to me. "Tyler told me you've been spending a lot of time here. He said you might be overstepping." I blinked. "Overstepping?" She crossed her arms. "My father's affairs are my family's concern. I appreciate your loyalty, but please don't get involved. It hurt to hear that. I had cared for her father like my own, but she spoke to me like I was some stranger off the street. Still I bit my tongue. I couldn't risk saying anything yet. Of course, I said softly. You're right. She looked at me for a moment, her face tightening. Good. I just need peace until we know what's going to happen. Then she left as suddenly as she came. I watched her go, my heart pounding. I didn't know if she was part of Tyler's plan or just blinded by love, but one thing was certain. If she found out what I was doing, she'd tell him. And if Tyler knew I was onto him, he'd come for me next. By noon, the storm outside had grown worse. The trees were bending under the wind, and thunder shook the ground. I drove back to the ranch, praying Tyler's deal would fall apart somehow. But when I arrived, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A convoy of black cars was parked outside the house. Men in suits stood by the porch, holding folders and briefcases. The main buyer had come early. Tyler was already there, shaking hands, smiling. His voice was loud enough to carry through the open door. Once we sign, gentlemen, the land's yours. Shaw Ranch is officially under new management. I froze behind the wall, my pulse racing. The man he was talking to looked familiar. A heavy-set man in a navy coat, with a scar on his cheek. I recognized him from a photo on Mr. Shaw's office wall. He was Earl Patterson, a former ranch foreman who'd been fired years ago for stealing livestock. Tyler was selling the ranch to a criminal. I took out my phone, my hands trembling, and began recording everything. 50 million, Tyler said. Half now, half after title transfer. No loose ends. Earl smirked. You're sure your father-in-law's not gonna wake up and cause trouble? Tyler laughed. Trust me. The old man's practically dead. Even if he wakes up, he won't remember a thing. At that moment I heard something else. Sirens, faint at first but getting louder. They were coming from the direction of the hospital. Everyone in the room turned toward the window. What's that? One of the buyers asked. Tyler frowned. Probably the storm. Ignore it. But my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from one of the nurses at the hospital. Mr. Shaw just woke up. I gasped, covering my mouth. My knees went weak. The message repeated in my mind like thunder. Mr. Shaw awake. The man Tyler thought he'd silenced forever was awake. And whatever secret he had been holding all this time, whatever truth he had buried deep, was about to come to light. The storm outside broke open with lightning. Rain poured down in sheets, hammering against the roof as thunder cracked the sky. Inside, Tyler's voice trembled for the first time. He woke up. I hid my phone behind my back and whispered, Yes, Tyler. He's awake. And he knows. His face drained of color. He took a step toward me. What did you just say? Before I could answer, a bolt of lightning struck the tree outside. The power went out. The entire house went dark. Screams echoed through the hall. And in that moment of chaos, Tyler's plan began to fall apart. The ranch wasn't going anywhere. Because Mr. Shaw was back. And he was about to expose everything. The storm outside raged like it had a mind of its own. Rain slammed against the windows, thunder shook the floor, and the ranch, once calm and peaceful, had turned into something out of a nightmare. The power was out, leaving everything in darkness except for flashes of lightning that lit up the walls every few seconds. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Across from me, Tyler Grant was no longer calm. The confident smile he always wore had disappeared. He looked like a man watching his whole world slip away. What do you mean he's awake? He demanded, stepping closer. His voice cracked with panic. You heard me, I said, gripping my phone tight. Mr. Shaw woke up. Lightning flashed again, and for a second, his face looked pale and hollow. His eyes wide with disbelief. No, he whispered. That's not possible. The doctors said. The doctors were wrong, I cut in. And if you've done anything behind his back, Tyler, you're about to pay for it. He took another step forward. You think you can threaten me, Caroline? I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you. His jaw clenched. Where's your proof? I raised my phone. Right here. I have everything you said about selling the ranch recorded. And the hospital texted me. They confirmed he's conscious. For the first time since I met him, Tyler looked afraid. Truly afraid. But then, his fear twisted into something darker. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he said quietly. You have no idea what's really going on in this family. Before I could ask what he meant, one of the men from the convoy shouted from the doorway. Boss, we need to get out of here. The roads are flooding. Tyler hesitated, torn between leaving and confronting me. Then he leaned in close, his voice low and venomous. If Douglas Shaw really is awake, he whispered, then it's too late for all of us. And with that, he turned and ran out into the storm. I stood there trembling, not sure if I should chase after him or drive to the hospital. My gut told me to go. I grabbed my jacket, jumped into my car and sped through the rain. Water sprayed across the windshield as thunder rolled overhead. The road was slick and twisting, and at one point I nearly lost control. But I kept going. Something inside me said I needed to be there when Mr. Shaw opened his eyes. When I finally reached St. Helena Hospital, the parking lot was filled with flashing lights. Nurses and doctors were rushing in and out. I ran inside, soaked to the skin, and pushed my way through the hallway. The nurse at the desk looked up. Miss Brooks, you can't go in yet. But I didn't stop. I pushed through the door to room 306. And there he was, Mr. Douglas Shaw, awake, sitting upright in bed. His eyes open and alert. He looked weak, his skin pale and his voice raspy, but when he saw me he smiled faintly. Caroline, he said softly. You kept your promise. Tears filled my eyes. You remember me? He nodded slowly. I remember everything. Then his eyes hardened. Even what Tyler tried to do. I sat beside his bed, my hands shaking. Mr. Shaw, he was trying to sell your ranch. I have proof. He said you gave him power of attorney. Mr. Shaw's face darkened. I did, he said quietly. But not for that reason. I wanted him to handle operations in case something happened to me. I trusted him. And he betrayed me. His voice grew stronger with each word, anger giving him power. He thinks he's clever, but he doesn't know the truth about this ranch. About what's buried in it. About who he's really married to. I frowned. What do you mean? He looked at me, his blue eyes sharp as ever. Caroline, everything Tyler wants, the money, the power, it's built on a lie. A lie I created to protect someone. I felt the air go still. Protect who? He hesitated, glancing toward the door like someone might be listening. Elena, he said finally. My daughter. She doesn't know who she really is. I blinked, confused. Sir, what do you mean? But before he could answer, a nurse burst into the room. Mr. Shaw. You need to rest, she said, rushing to his side. He gripped my hand tightly. Caroline, listen to me. Go to my study. There's a black folder in the safe behind the portrait of the ranch. The code is 1957. Bring it to me before Tyler finds it. He nodded. I will. Then he whispered something else. So quiet I almost didn't catch it. If I'm right, the truth will destroy him. I left the hospital that night with my heart pounding. The storm had calmed, but the air still smelled of rain and danger. When I got back to the ranch, the lights were still out. The driveway was muddy, and the black cars were gone. Tyler had disappeared. I ran into the study, pulled the portrait off the wall, and found the safe exactly where Mr. Shaw said it would be. My fingers trembled as I typed in the code, 1957, and heard the soft click of the lock opening. Inside, there was a single black folder with Mr. Shaw's initials embossed on it. I pulled it out, wiped off the dust, and flipped it open. My breath caught. Inside were documents. Birth records, photographs, legal papers, everything carefully sealed. But what caught my attention was a birth certificate. It had Elena Shaw's name on it. But under Mother, it didn't say Margaret Shaw. It said someone else's name. A woman I had never heard of. And under Father, it didn't say Douglas Shaw. It said someone else entirely. Felt dizzy. My mind was spinning. If what I was seeing was true, Elena wasn't Mr. Shaw's biological daughter. And that meant Tyler, her husband, had just tried to steal a ranch from a man who wasn't even his father-in-law by blood. But that wasn't the worst part. At the bottom of the folder, tucked between the papers, was a handwritten letter from Mr. Shaw himself. It said, "If you are reading this, the truth has come to light. What I did was to protect Elena from a secret her real father could never know. The ranch was built not just on land, but on debt. Debt paid in blood. Tyler's connection to it isn't accidental. He was sent here. And when the time comes, everything will come full circle." My hands went cold. Tyler wasn't just a greedy son-in-law. He was connected to the very secret that Mr. Shaw had been hiding for decades. And he'd come into this family for a reason far darker than anyone could imagine. Just then I heard a noise outside, the crunch of gravel, slow and deliberate. Headlights swept across the window. Tyler's SUV. He was back. I quickly shut the folder, stuffed it into my jacket, and turned off the flashlight. My heart hammered as I ducked behind the desk. The front door creaked open. "Caroline!" His voice called out, calm but cold. "You've been busy." I held my breath. "I know you went to see him," he continued, his footsteps getting closer. "You think you're smart, but you're just another pawn in his game. That old man's been lying to everyone, including you." His shoes stopped right outside the study door. I could see his shadow under the crack of light. He turned the handle slowly. The door began to open. And then, a loud bang echoed through the house. Glass shattered. And a man's voice shouted from outside. Deep, powerful, and angry. "Tyler Grant! Step away from her." It was Mr. Shaw. He was standing in the pouring rain, leaning on a cane. His hospital gown replaced by his old ranch coat. He was alive, awake, and furious. Tyler froze. "You!" Mr. Shaw raised his voice. "You tried to steal what's mine, boy. But you forgot one thing: this ranch was built on secrets. And you're one of them." Tyler's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" Mr. Shaw took another step forward. "I know who you are. And I know why you really married my daughter." The wind howled. The thunder roared again. And right then, everything exploded into chaos. Rain poured down in thick sheets, blurring the world into silver and shadow. The thunder rolled like an angry beast above the ranch, shaking the ground under our feet. There in the middle of the storm stood Douglas Shaw, tall, soaked but fierce. His eyes burned with the same fire I remembered, the kind that once tamed wild horses and built empires. Across from him, Tyler Grant froze on the porch steps. His fancy suit clung to his body, drenched from the rain. The look on his face was pure disbelief. "You," Tyler stammered, stepping back. "You shouldn't even be standing." Mr. Shaw's lips curved into a tight, grim smile. "You always did underestimate me, boy. That was your first mistake." Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating both of them, one man fighting for legacy, the other for greed. I stood in the doorway, clutching the black folder to my chest, my heart hammering. Every part of me wanted to scream to stop them, but something in the air told me I couldn't interfere. Not yet. This was between them. Tyler laughed, a shaky, desperate sound. "You don't scare me, old man. The ranch is already as good as sold. You can't stop what's coming." Mr. Shaw took a step forward, rain dripping from his hat brim. "Oh, I can stop it. Because you're not just a thief. You're part of something you don't even understand." "What are you talking about?" Tyler snapped. "I'm talking about who you are," Shaw said, his voice rising over the thunder. About why you came here in the first place. Tyler frowned, shaking his head. You've lost it. I married Elena because I love her. I worked hard to earn your trust. You married her, Shaw interrupted, because your father told you to. The air went still. Tyler blinked. My father. What do you mean? Mr. Shaw's face hardened. Don't act like you don't know. You were sent here by Richard Grant, the same man who tried to destroy me 30 years ago. Lightning flashed, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. Tyler took a step forward, his voice trembling. That's not true. My father, he was a businessman. He died years ago. Exactly, Shaw said. He died the same year I buried the truth about this ranch. I felt my knees weaken. The pieces were starting to come together, but not enough to make sense. What truth? I whispered under my breath. Shaw turned his head slightly, his voice steady but sharp. This land isn't just a ranch, Caroline. It's built on something much darker. Tyler's hands clenched at his sides. You're lying. You just can't stand that your time is over. But Mr. Shaw didn't flinch. He took another step closer until they were only a few feet apart. Your father tried to blackmail me years ago, Shaw said. He found out about the deal I made to save this land, the one that kept it from being taken by the bank. He wanted in. When I refused, he threatened to expose me. We fought. And he died that night. Tyler's face went pale. You killed him. Shaw's voice dropped low. It was an accident, but the guilt ate at me for years. I tracked down his family, wanting to make it right. And that's when I found out something I never should have. Your mother was already pregnant. With you. The words hit like a lightning strike. Gasp. Tyler staggered backward, eyes wide. What are you saying? He whispered. Mr. Shaw's voice was calm but heavy. I'm saying you're standing on the land your father tried to steal. And you didn't just marry into my family by chance. You were drawn back here by blood and revenge. Tyler's lips trembled. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. That's impossible. It's the truth, Shaw said. And the proof is in that folder Caroline's holding. Tyler's gaze snapped to me. His expression shifted from shock to fury. Give it to me, he demanded. I shook my head. No. Caroline, Mr. Shaw warned, his voice firm. Don't move. Tyler lunged forward. I said give it to me. I stumbled back as he grabbed my arm, trying to rip the folder away. Papers flew out, scattering into the wind. Tyler, stop! I screamed. He shoved me aside. I hit the floor hard, pain shooting through my shoulder. Mr. Shaw shouted. You touch her again and I swear. But before he could finish, Tyler turned on him, his eyes wild. You ruined my life. My father's dead because of you. You think I came here to steal your ranch? No, I came here to finish what he started. And then he charged at him. Everything happened fast. Mr. Shaw raised his cane just in time, blocking Tyler's blow. They struggled in the mud, both slipping and grunting, the storm roaring around them. I scrambled to my feet, shouting for them to stop, but neither listened. Your father was a thief and a liar. Shaw yelled, shoving him back. You're just like him. Tyler's eyes burned with hatred. And you're a murderer. He lunged again, grabbing a shovel leaning against the porch. He swung it wildly, the metal blade glinting in the lightning. Tyler, don't! I screamed. Mr. Shaw stumbled backward, clutching his chest. He was breathing hard, his face pale. In that split second, I did the only thing I could think of. I threw myself between them. The shovel missed by inches, slamming into the railing. The wood splintered, and the porch gave way beneath Tyler's feet. He fell backward, straight off the edge. There was a sickening thud as he hit the ground below. For a moment, the only sound was rain and thunder. Tyler! I shouted, rushing to the edge. He was lying motionless in the mud, not moving. Oh my God, I whispered. Mr. Shaw, I think. But when I turned back, Mr. Shaw was slumped against the wall, clutching his chest again. His breathing was shallow. "No, no, no," I said, running to him. "Stay with me, please." He looked up at me, his voice barely above a whisper. The folder. Don't let anyone take it. The truth is bigger than you think." I gripped his hand. "You're going to be fine. I'll call for help." He shook his head slowly. "No, it's not over yet. There's one more thing you need to know, about Elena." "What about her?" I asked desperately. He tried to speak, but his voice faltered. "She's not," he coughed, gasping for breath. "She's not who you think she is." And then his hand went limp. The heart monitor on the portable unit beside him let out a long, flat beep. "No," I cried, shaking him. "Please wake up." But he didn't move. I felt tears streaming down my face, mixing with the rain. Down below, Tyler groaned, alive but hurt. I didn't know what to do. Everything was spiraling out of control. Then, in the distance, I saw headlights cutting through the rain. Car was approaching fast. As it stopped, the driver's door opened. It was Elena. She ran toward us, screaming over the storm. "Caroline! What happened? Where's my father?" Turned trembling. He tried to tell me something about you before." Her face went white. "About me?" "Yes," I said softly. "He said you're not who I think you are." Her eyes widened in fear. "He told you that." The wind howled again, and thunder shook the earth. And in that moment, I saw something in Elena's eyes I had never seen before. Something cold, calculated. She looked past me, down at Tyler's body, and whispered, "Then I guess it's time you know the truth too." The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the damage was already done. The porch was broken, the ranch was a wreck, and Mr. Shaw, he wasn't breathing. Elena stood over her father's body, her soaked hair clinging to her cheeks, her face pale but unreadable. For a long moment she said nothing. Just stared at him, at me, at the mess her husband had caused. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "Soft. I told him this would happen," she whispered. My heart ached. I couldn't tell if it was grief or fear, or something much darker that filled her tone. "Elena," I began, my voice shaking. "Your father tried to tell me something before he stopped breathing. He said you're not who I think you are." She turned to me slowly, her eyes gleaming in the dim light. "And did he tell you who I really am?" I shook my head. "No. He didn't get the chance." Her lips curved into a faint, almost sad smile. "Then maybe it's time you found out. But you might not like what you hear." Before I could respond, she walked past me, crouched beside her father, and gently closed his eyes. "I warned him to let the past die," she murmured. "But he couldn't. He never could." We heard a faint groan from the yard below. "Taylor." Elena's expression hardened in an instant. She turned her head sharply toward the sound. "He's still alive." I hesitated. "Yes, but he's hurt. He fell." For a moment, I thought I saw relief flicker in her face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "Good," she said softly. "He still owes me answers." "Elena," I said, stunned. "He tried to kill your father." She stood, brushing rain from her arms. "And my father tried to kill his." Funny how history repeats itself, isn't it? Her words sent a chill through me. "What are you talking about?" "Yes." She looked at me then, her eyes sharp as glass. "You think Tyler just showed up out of nowhere? You think I just fell in love with a ranch hand who turned out to be my father's enemy's son? No, Caroline. None of this was an accident." My stomach turned. "You knew who he was." "Of course," she said. "I knew everything. I knew his name, his family, even his father's connection to this land. I married Tyler because I wanted to make sure the past stayed buried. But I didn't expect him to dig it up himself." She sighed, glancing back at her father. "He was supposed to stay in that coma. That was the plan." The words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, speechless. What do you mean that was the plan? She didn't answer. Instead, she began walking toward the porch steps, her heels clicking against the soaked wood. Elena, I called, grabbing her arm. Did you have something to do with your father's coma? She turned to me, her face cold, calm, and terrifyingly composed. I didn't want him dead, Caroline, she said quietly. Just quiet. He was going to destroy everything. Me, Tyler, the ranch, everything we built. I took a step back, my heart racing. You drugged him. Not me, she said, her tone sharp. Tyler did it. But it was my idea. Froze. She continued, her voice trembling just slightly. We needed him out of the way while we finalized the sale. Tyler's company was going under. He needed the money and I needed control. So we made a deal. She looked up at me, almost pleading. It was supposed to be temporary. Just until the papers were signed. But then, Tyler got greedy. Lightning flashed again, followed by the low rumble of thunder far off. I could see Tyler down below, struggling to his feet, limping toward the barn. Elena noticed too. He's running, she muttered. Let him go, I said quickly. He's hurt. No, she snapped. If he gets his hands on those papers again, we're all finished. Elena, stop. I yelled, but she was already running down the muddy path. I had no choice but to follow. We reached the barn just as Tyler stumbled inside. The big wooden doors swung open, creaking in the wind. Inside, the dim light from the hanging bulb flickered over stacks of hay, tools, and the shadowed outline of the old tractor. Tyler was hunched near the corner, clutching his side. He looked up, his face pale, eyes bloodshot. Elena, he said weakly. He's dead, isn't he? She stepped closer. You did that. You pushed him too far. He shook his head. No, you did. You used both of us. You told me he'd never wake up. I stood frozen in the doorway, unsure if I should run or scream. Elena's voice was cold. And you believed me. That's the problem with men like you, Tyler. You're always so sure you're the smartest person in the room. Tyler's hand tightened around something I hadn't noticed before. An envelope, crumpled and damp. I found this, he said, holding it up. Your father kept records. Bank transfers, names, dates. You weren't just trying to sell the ranch, Elena. You've been laundering money through it. Her face went white. Give me that, she hissed. He shook his head. Not a chance. Before either of them could move, a sharp crack filled the air. The light bulb above us burst, plunging the barn into near darkness. Elena screamed. Tyler dropped the envelope, clutching his arm. I saw the flash, a gunshot. Elena cried. What did you do? She stood there, shaking, the gun trembling in her hand. He was going to ruin everything. Tyler collapsed to the ground, groaning. His hand pressed to his bleeding arm. You shot him, I screamed. It's just a flesh wound, she said, her breath uneven. He'll live. He just needs to learn to keep quiet. I knelt beside him, pressing my scarf to his wound. He winced but didn't fight me. Elena, you need to stop, I said. This is madness. But when I looked up, she wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on the corner of the barn, on something half hidden beneath a tarp. She walked toward it slowly, pulled the tarp aside and froze. What is this? She whispered. Turned to look. Underneath was a metal chest, old and rusted, with the initials DS carved into the lid. Mr. Shaw's initials. Tyler coughed. He told me once there were secrets buried here. Maybe that's what he meant. Elena knelt, brushing off the dust, and opened the chest. Inside were stacks of papers, photographs, and a small black ledger. She flipped through the pages, and her face drained of color. Oh my God, she murmured. It's all here. Every name. Every deal. What deals? Asked. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with horror. My father wasn't just fighting for this ranch, she said softly. He was protecting it. From the same people who destroyed Tyler's family. She held up the ledger, her hands trembling. They were both pawns in something much bigger than we ever knew. Before I could ask what she meant, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder. Someone had called the police. Elena's eyes darted to Tyler, then to me. We can't let them find this. If they see what's in here, none of us are safe. Elena, I started, but she grabbed the chest and ran toward the back exit. Elena, I shouted, chasing her. She disappeared into the dark, her figure swallowed by the storm. I turned back to Tyler, who was bleeding and pale. What's in that ledger? Asked. He looked up at me weakly. If I tell you, you'll wish you never knew. Outside, lightning flashed again. And through the window, I caught a glimpse of Elena's silhouette, running toward the main road, the chest in her arms. She wasn't just fleeing. She was protecting something or someone. But from who? And why did I suddenly feel like Mr. Shaw's death was only the beginning? The night air was thick with tension. Red and blue lights painted the wet fields as the sirens drew closer, their sound cutting through the heavy silence like a blade. I was kneeling in the mud beside Tyler, pressing my scarf tighter against his wound to stop the bleeding. His face was pale, sweat glistening on his forehead. Elena's gone, I whispered, looking toward the tree line where her shadow had vanished. He groaned softly, his voice trembling. Let her go. You don't know what she's carrying. I know enough, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That chest has something your father and hers both died over. Tyler's eyes flickered open, clouded with pain. Then pray she never opens it. The flashing lights reached the ranch gate. 2 police cars, a dark SUV, and an ambulance rolled up the driveway. I ran out to meet them, my heart pounding. Help! Shouted. There's a man injured in the barn, and another upstairs, he's not breathing. The officers hurried past me, paramedics following close behind. One of them stopped and grabbed my shoulders. Ma'am, slow down, who's hurt? Douglas Shaw, I gasped. The owner of the ranch. And Tyler Grant. He's been shot. The officer's eyes widened. Shot? Who fired the weapon? I hesitated. Elena Shaw, I said finally. She ran off toward the road. He nodded sharply, calling for backup over his radio. All units be advised. Possible armed suspect, female, late 30s, dark hair, last seen heading east toward County Road 12. Proceed with caution. My stomach twisted. It didn't feel right, turning her in like that. But she had shot her husband. She had confessed to planning her father's coma. And now she was running with whatever truth that ledger carried. This wasn't the Elena I knew. This was someone else entirely. They took Mr. Shaw's body away first. Watching them load him into the ambulance broke something inside me. The man had survived a coma, only to die trying to protect the very people who betrayed him. Tyler was next. He was conscious now, though weak. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, he turned his head slightly toward me. Caroline, he rasped. You need to find that chest before she does. Don't let it disappear. I leaned closer. Why? What's in it? He swallowed hard. Proof. Of what this land really is. And why my father died. Proof of what, Tyler? He winced, his breath shaky. Your boss wasn't who you thought he was either. Before I could ask more, the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance, and the doors slammed shut. I stood in the rain, numb, as the vehicles drove away one by one. The flashing lights faded into the night, leaving me alone in the storm. Hours later I sat in the kitchen, the only part of the house still standing. The deputies had gone. The ranch was quiet again, except for the steady drip of rain leaking through the ceiling. The folder I'd clutched all night lay open on the table. Inside were the scattered pages from Mr. Shaw's study, old property deeds, banknotes, and a photograph that made my blood run cold. It was an old black and white photo of 3 men shaking hands in front of the ranch gate. Mr. Shaw was one of them. The second was unmistakably Richard Grant, Tyler's father. But the third man, I recognized him. He was Sheriff Dan Monroe, the same man who just led the investigation tonight. A chill crept up my spine. In the corner of the photo, faint writing read, Shaw-Grantham Agreement, 1994. Grantham, not Grant. I grabbed my phone and searched the name online. The results made my stomach turn. Grantham Holdings, corporate conglomerate linked to land acquisitions, environmental scandals, and political bribery investigations. Shut down in 1995 after founder Richard Grantham died under mysterious circumstances. Grantham. Grant. Tyler's real surname. He must have changed it after his father's death, to escape the legacy or hide from it. And Mr. Shaw? He had been in business with him. The ledger Elena had taken. It wasn't just a record. It was evidence. Evidence of the deals, the money, the cover-ups. Evidence that could destroy people still alive and powerful today. The front door creaked. Froze. Caroline. A familiar voice called softly. I turned, and my heart nearly stopped. It was Elena. She stood in the doorway, drenched, her clothes muddy, her hair clinging to her face. But she was calm. Calm. In her hand was the metal chest. You shouldn't be alone out here, she said quietly. The police are looking for me. I rose slowly. You shot your husband. Her lips tightened. He deserved worse. You planned your father's coma. She sighed, setting the chest down on the floor. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I said, my voice trembling. She walked to the counter, picked up the old photograph and stared at it. You found this, didn't you? Yes. Her eyes flickered with sadness. Then you know he wasn't innocent either. My father, I mean. What was he hiding, Elena? She looked up at me then, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. The truth about this land. I frowned. The ranch. Yes, it was never just a ranch. It's sitting on top of an old mining field. My father and Richard Grantham bought the rights together in the 90s. But they weren't just mining for minerals. They were extracting chemicals. Dangerous ones. Ones that could poison an entire river if leaked. I felt my breath catch. You mean toxic waste? She nodded. They hid it underground when the company got exposed. And when Richard died, my father kept it a secret. He used the ranch to launder money for years, to keep inspectors away. That's what that ledger proves. And the sheriff, I whispered. He was part of it, wasn't he? Elena nodded again. He helped cover it up. They all did. The room fell silent. Only the ticking of the old wall clock filled the air. Then slowly she opened the metal chest. Inside I saw thick stacks of documents, sealed envelopes, and a flash drive. This is everything, she said quietly. Every payment, every deal, every name. If this ever goes public, half the people in this state would lose their jobs, or worse. I stared at the papers, feeling the weight of what I was seeing. So that's why you didn't want your father to wake up, I said softly. You were afraid he'd confess. Elena closed the lid, her voice breaking. I just wanted to protect my family. You think I'm proud of what I did? I was trying to stop everything from falling apart. I looked at her, really looked, and for a moment I saw not a criminal, but a woman trapped in her own lies, desperate to save what little she had left. Elena, I said gently, it's not too late. We can still fix this. We can hand this over to the authorities. She shook her head, stepping back. No, you don't get it. If they find out, I'll go to prison. Tyler will too. My father's name will be dragged through the mud. I can't let that happen. Elena. She lifted the gun again, her hand shaking. I'm sorry, Caroline. But you weren't supposed to be part of this. Froze. Elena, please, I whispered. Put it down. Tears streamed down her face. You're a good person. I don't want to hurt you. But I can't let anyone take this from me. And before I could move, she ran. Out the door, into the night again. I chased her to the edge of the property, But when I reached the road, she was gone. All that remained were the faint tire tracks leading into the forest. The next morning the news spread fast. The police found her car abandoned 5 miles from the ranch. The chest was missing. Elena was nowhere to be found. The sheriff told the press it was a domestic tragedy, but I could see the fear behind his eyes. He knew what was in that chest. And he knew that if Elena ever came back with the ledger, it could destroy him. That night, as I sat alone in the house, I found something tucked beneath the kitchen counter. A small flash drive wrapped in tape. It must have fallen from the chest during the struggle. I stared at it, my hand trembling. Then I plugged it into my laptop. A folder appeared on the screen, labeled Project SDOD. Clicked it open. And what I saw made my blood run cold. There were blueprints of underground storage tanks, chemical maps, payment records, and a list of names. Politicians, businessmen, and the sheriff. All of them linked to the same secret project. I covered my mouth, heart pounding. Mr. Shaw hadn't just been fighting to protect his ranch. He'd been protecting a secret that could shake the whole state. And Elena? She was still out there with the rest of the evidence. Outside, thunder rumbled again in the distance. For a moment, I thought I saw headlights flash through the window, then disappear. Someone was watching the ranch. And deep down I knew, this wasn't over. Whatever Project Ashwood was just waking up. The wind howled across the open plains, sweeping through the broken fences and empty fields of the Shaw Ranch. The morning light stretched thinly across the land, dull and gray, like the calm before something terrible. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. The images from that flash drive burned behind my eyes. The names, the files, the maps of underground waste tanks hidden beneath the ranch. Every secret the Shaw family had tried to bury was right there, sitting on my laptop. But the question that haunted me most wasn't what had been done. It was why. Why did Mr. Shaw keep it hidden? Why did Elena run? And who was watching me from the dark last night? At 7 a.m. my phone rang. It was Sheriff Dan Monroe. "Caroline," he said, his voice oddly calm. "We need to talk. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Don't go anywhere." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, my stomach twisting. He sounded too calm. "Sure." I turned to the laptop, still open on the kitchen table. The file, Project SDOD, blinked on the screen like a heartbeat. I knew if the sheriff saw it, I'd be next to disappear. I grabbed a flash drive and started copying the files. The progress bar crawled slowly, 30%, 52%, 79%, when a car engine rumbled outside. He was early. The sheriff stepped out of his cruiser wearing his beige hat, dark glasses, and that same practiced smile that had always seemed harmless before. But now it looked like something else, like a mask. "Morning, Caroline," he said, tapping the brim of his hat. "Mind if I come in?" I forced a smile. "Sure." He walked inside, glancing around the kitchen. His gaze lingered on the laptop for a moment. "Heard about the mess last night. You've been through quite a storm, haven't you?" "You could say that," I replied quietly. He chuckled. "Tragic business. Elena's gone off the grid and poor Mr. Shaw. Well, some folks just don't know when to let go of old ghosts." There was a long pause. Then he said, "I need to collect whatever documents you found in the house. Evidence, you understand." Kept my face neutral. "Everything was taken by the police last night." He raised an eyebrow. "That's so. Because I heard you were seen carrying something out of the barn before the deputies arrived." My throat went dry. "I was helping the paramedics." He smiled faintly. "Caroline, don't lie to me. You're not good at it." He took a slow step toward the table. His hand rested casually on his holster. "Where's the ledger?" he asked. I met his eyes. "Elena took it." "That's not what I asked." He leaned in close, lowering his voice. "I know Douglas showed you things he shouldn't have. But this," he gestured to the laptop, "this is far bigger than him. If those files leak, a lot of good people get hurt. You don't want that blood on your hands, do you?" "Good people?" Snap. You mean the ones who buried poison under a ranch and covered it up for 30 years? His smile vanished. He exhaled slowly, then pulled out a chair and sat down, his tone turning cold. You know, your boss trusted me once. He thought secrets were safer when you shared them with someone powerful enough to protect them. But power cuts both ways, Caroline. I took a step back. You killed Richard Grantham, didn't you? He tilted his head. That's not how I'd put it. I cleaned up a mistake. Just like I'm about to do now. He reached for his gun. But before he could draw it, the sound of tires screeched outside. Another car. The sheriff turned his head toward the window, and I ran. I grabbed the flash drive from the laptop, yanked the power cord, and bolted through the back door. Caroline, he shouted, slamming into the table behind me. Don't you run from me. I sprinted across the muddy yard, my heart pounding, the cold wind burning my lungs. Behind me, I heard boots crunching gravel and the click of a gun being cocked. Stop, he yelled. I didn't. The black SUV that had arrived earlier screeched to a halt beside the barn. The driver's door flew open, and out stepped Elena. Her hair was a tangled mess, her clothes still muddy, but she was alive. And in her hands was the metal chest. Elena! Gasped. Get in, she shouted. I dove into the passenger seat just as the sheriff fired a shot. The bullet shattered the rear window. Elena slammed the gas pedal. The tires spun, throwing mud into the air, and we tore down the dirt road. Behind us, the sheriff jumped into his cruiser, siren wailing. Are you insane? He yelled. He's going to kill us both. Not if I get to the press first, she said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. I still have the ledger, and everything he's afraid of. The chase tore through the countryside, mud and gravel flying under the tires. The sheriff's car stayed close behind, his headlights glowing in the rearview mirror like eyes. Elena, I said breathlessly, you said you wanted to protect your family. How does exposing this help? She didn't answer at first. Her face was set, eyes fierce. My father thought he could buy redemption by hiding the truth, she said finally. But lies don't protect, they destroy. I won't let my family die with his sins. The road curved sharply ahead, leading toward the old wooden bridge over Blackwater Creek. Elena floored it. Hold on. We hit the bridge at full speed. The old boards groaned under the weight of the SUV. Behind us, the sheriff's car followed, but the wood was slick and his tires skidded sideways. There was a loud crack. The bridge collapsed beneath him. The cruiser plunged into the creek below with a splash that echoed through the valley. Elena slammed the brakes, breathing hard. We climbed out, watching the water churn below. The sheriff's car was half submerged, lights flickering. Do you think he's... I started. He's not dead, she said grimly. Men like him never die easy. We reached town an hour later. Elena drove straight to a small local newspaper office, the Hollow Creek Gazette. I used to know someone here, she said quietly. Someone who still believes in the truth. She parked outside, clutching the ledger and the flash drive. You don't have to do this alone, I said softly. We can do it together. She looked at me for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled, the first real smile I'd seen on her face since this began. Thank you, Caroline, for believing in me. Even when I didn't. We stepped inside the office. The editor, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, stared at us in shock as Elena set the metal chest on his desk. Print everything, she said. Every name, every payment. The people deserve to know. 2 weeks later, the headlines swept across the nation. Project Ashwood exposed. Decades-long environmental cover-up tied to state officials and business leaders. Investigations were launched. Arrests were made. Sheriff Monroe was found alive but resigned under pressure. Tyler recovered, though he disappeared soon after the scandal broke. And Elena Shaw. She turned herself in. Her statement to the press was simple. I did terrible things to protect a lie. Now I'll face the truth. She was sentenced to 2 years for obstruction, But in time, people began to see her differently. Not as a criminal, but as the woman who tore open one of the biggest scandals in the state's history. I still work at the ranch. It's quiet now, peaceful even. They rebuilt the house, restored the barns, and turned part of the land into a wildlife reserve, cleaning the soil that had once been poisoned. Sometimes when the sun sets over the fields, I think about Mr. Shaw. About what he said before he died. The truth is bigger than you think. He was right. It was bigger than all of us. Last week, I received a letter postmarked from a women's correctional facility. It was from Elena. Inside was a single photograph. Me, her, and Mr. Shaw at the ranch years ago. On the back, she'd written, "Thank you for reminding me that kindness doesn't end where forgiveness begins." I smiled through tears as I read it. The world still talks about Project Ashwood, but to me, it's not just a story about greed and betrayal. It's about redemption. About how even in the darkest secrets, there's a chance to do the right thing, if you're brave enough to face it. That night, as I stood by the porch, I noticed something glinting in the dirt where the old barn once stood. Picked it up. It was the brass tag from the metal chest, engraved with the letters D.S. Douglas Shaw. For a moment, I swore I heard his voice in the wind. Take care of the land, Caroline. It's always been more than just soil. It's the story of everyone who tried to save it. I smiled, looking out at the horizon. The storm had passed. The truth had finally come home. And for the first time in a long while, felt free.